everybody. This is
Hi.
Alan Feldman from the Laguna Woods Democratic Club. And this is another segment of our program, Black in Laguna Woods. Thank you for taking the time for watching us today. We're going to be discussing today, we call it the nexus between poverty, education, and racism. We're picking up on some ideas. Dr. Fran Williams gave a talk to the community bridge builders in Laguna Woods on September 12th, just a couple of weeks ago. And this was the topic of her discussion. Now, if you've watched this program before, you might have run into Dr. Fran. She's been on more than once. She's been on a couple of times. And she always has a lot of things to say. And she's always has insightful things to say. So we are going to be picking up on some of the ideas that you've talked about in to the community bridge builders. And to talk about these things today, we have two very active residents of Laguna Woods Village. First is Sharon Phillips, pardon me. Sharon Phillips, who was a former officer, current very active member of the African American Heritage Club. She is on the board of directors of the Foundation of Laguna Woods. And I know that she's also a member of the Community Bridge Builders, and she's also a member of the Democratic Club of Laguna Woods. And also Sue Snyder. Sue is a member of Laguna Woods Democratic Club. She's an official greeter at the Democratic Club meetings, and she's on the board of directors of the Concerned Citizens of Laguna Woods. And Sue and her husband, Rich Snyder, are the people you see outside of Stater Brothers doing the food collection for South County Outreach. They've been doing that for years. So both of you, thank you so much for being here today. It is really greatly appreciated, and pleasure to have you both. And I am going to start, we're going to start with a definition. And Sharon, I'm going to ask you for this definition. It's a definition of racism. We all have our own ideas about it, but especially in the context we'll be talking about today, what's your idea? What's your feeling, idea? How do you define racism?
Well, I'm going to define racism the way that Dr. Fran, in her presentation, defined racism. And she taught that racism is how we are taught consciously, and then how we collect data and use it subconsciously. The ism in racism is your subconscious working. It starts early and is based on the sum total of your experience and exposures from birth to death. Included in racism is judgment. We judge people who are different from us, and we won't change that unless something more is done. I mean, once that kind of gets into your subconscious, then that's how we view the world and everything. And she also talked about racism as being America's elephant in the room. It's something that we know is there, but we all just kind of, maneuver around it because we just don't know how to, deal with it. So that's what I got out of, Dr. Fran's definition of racism. And I know, Sue, you had some other notes also on that.
My notes pretty much match your notes, Sharon. Okay. I would add that she was very clear that the ism in racism was not a neutral thing. It's a negative thing. Just wanted to be clear on that. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Okay.
We're talking about racism as being it's not really the simple thing. It's not really I hate you because you're different. Seems to me that it's more of a symptom of racism. That's something that we learn about. You know what? I don't know if I'm making sense here on that. Yeah. But it's it's something that's more ingrained in our society, and in probably all societies, than just the simple, well, everybody hates everybody because they're different. Now, I don't know. Do you guys agree with that? Is that?
Oh yeah, Yeah.
Well, I think that like what she stated was that, like be, being different, like is not neutral. I mean, it's like there's something negative, associated with people who are different. You're either inferior, or superior. So it's like there is something of value associated with you being different, whether it's good or bad or whatever. So, it's like those judgments are made like on people, who are different. I mean, that's just the way, it goes. That's the way that we deal with it. And she said, again, like that won't change unless we start having, these type of conversations. So I really do thank, the Democratic Club for providing this forum so that we can, like talk about this. And and the community bridge builders for having these different talks so that we can, understand each other and maybe come up with ways, for us to like navigate through all this. Because I mean, it's like, Alan, to me, I mean, I'm 74 years old, and it's like we're still going through the same old things we've been going through, since the civil rights movement and everything, so I'm tired of the same old soap.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. Well, another thing that Dr. France said that I'd like, again, I'd like both of your opinions on this. We'll start with Sue this time. She said, in combating both racism and poverty, two of our biggest tools that we have are education and the vote. She mentioned the vote also. So,
Right.
Sue, what do you think about that? I know you were a teacher
Right.
in your previous life. So, what do you think about that? Is education a way we can fight racism, and how would that work?
Dr. Fran was such a powerful speaker, such a good speaker. One of the things she had the audience do to make us aware of our own views, she asked questions. She'd say, raise your hand if you went to school and everybody looked the same as you, the same skin color. Almost everyone in that audience, couple hundred people, raised their hand. Raise your hand if you had any friends who were different than you. Very few hands went up. And it's just how we were educated wherever we grew up. She asked, in your neighborhood, was there a library, medical care, markets? Some of the poor neighborhoods don't have markets. And we all need to be educated on how to make this world work better for everyone.
Sharon, how about you?
The question was about, education, whether or not education is important to combat racism. And of course, like bottom line is, I think education is important, period. And I do think that, it really is separate but equal, even, like for me, like I grew up in a neighborhood, and we all went to, like elementary school together, but this was during busing. And so we were bused to, to go to school at a more affluent, like neighborhood. And our principal, like did this intentionally. She didn't want us to go to school like in the inner city schools and stuff. And so I was exposed at this, through, like junior high school and high school. And I was exposed to like people from like different, races, And I could say that my education was, like better. And I think that's because of, how people view, how the powers to be view inner city schools. I don't think that the money that the other affluent neighborhoods get, the poorer schools definitely, do not get that money. And so it impacts the teachers that are hired, and the material that that comes into the schools. So I would say that I got a better education. So yes, I do believe that schools are not equal, and that the education out there is not the same. And I think race plays a major role in that.
Mm.
Let me follow up on that for a minute and ask you, Sue. That's because you brought up the questions that Dr. Fran was asking, basically about the settings of the school and the neighborhood of the school.
Right.
How important do you think that is? It seems to me that things will go a lot better and a lot easier for people if you're in pleasant surroundings.
Oh, yeah.
That if the school is newer rather than older, if it's kept up rather than allowed to deteriorate. So how important do you think that is? It's like the physical, and it ties in with what Sharon was saying too about resources available to the school, mostly money. How important do you think that is? Do you think it'd be a real detriment to people's education if they don't have up to date
Oh,
facilities?
absolutely. I taught at Anaheim High School. And fortunately, Apple computers donated a couple of computer labs to us to help our students. And a majority of our population was Hispanic, and many of them struggling to learn English, a lot of immigrants here, not quite legally. But we constantly had fundraisers to get them. I can't tell you how many sports uniforms I bought, a couple of prom dresses. Anytime there was a field trip where kids needed to pay for that and the parents couldn't do it, the teachers were kicking in all the time. And to add to that, I went to Compton High School.
Mhm.
And it just seemed, that was back in the 50s. We didn't have much there. I think I would say about half of the population was African American. And I recall we had 4 Hispanic girls. It was a mixture, Compton High School. Yeah. But I don't see, if no matter how much you tried to make all the schools have equal amount of money to spend, the higher class neighborhoods, those parents are going to be kicking in and buying whatever the kids want. I just don't see how it would be totally equal.
But then, Sue, but I think, like LA, like LA Unified School District is like a large district. And
Right.
it has some of, everybody, like all over the city. But yet, like you go into like the more affluent, like neighborhoods, someone is making the decision to like funnel those the monies that's collected from tax dollars or whatever to
Yeah.
like these, to these other, like neighborhoods and stuff. So I don't think that the inner city schools are like getting the funds that they need. And I think somebody is like making that decision. And, I think a lot of the decisions, like are based on race, I mean, why aren't the funds being funneled you know, so to me, that's going to, affect the schools, the education, and, you know, you know, Dr. Fran talked about, what does she call it? Institutional, uh, like racism. So somebody is making these decisions, and the people, who they feel are inferior are, are left needing and lacking. So, that's my take on it. So
It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
yes,
You
it is.
starve something of resources, and then look at it and say, well, you see, it's not doing very well. People don't know what they're doing there. So it's really the old vicious cycle, I
Yep,
guess.
it
We
is.
we could call it. Yeah, it's something, something that in my elementary school, I wondered if you guys ran into this. My elementary school drew students from two different places. One was where I lived, which was a huge, I call it a vertical suburb, in the middle of Manhattan, a place called Stuyvesant Town. It was all white. It was post-war housing for veterans, and it was in the middle of a neighborhood which eventually became known as Alphabet City. It was a very heavy Puerto Rican and Black neighborhood, and there was two groups of kids who went to good old PS 61, and there were like five classes, the fifth grade did five class 5-1, 5-2, 5-3, 5-4, 5-5, and almost all the kids from Stuyvesant Town were in class 5-1 and 5-2, and the higher the class number, 5-3, 5-4, 5-5, the darker the complexion of the students.
Mm.
I don't know what this was based on, but is that something that you ran into or that you saw when you were in school? Sharon, you can start with that.
Well, I'm not sure that I understand the question about the 5-1 and 5-2.
Well,
What?
it's just that the classes were it was just a class number. They give it the class number 5-1, 5-2. Those
Oh,
were obviously supposed to be the most advanced classes. They
Oh,
were almost all white.
oh yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, it's like when I went to school, it was like always, like college prep classes and whatever. And I was always in the college prep, but I was usually the only African American, in the college prep classes. And most of the African American kids were in like the shop classes, or the home ec classes, and like things like that. So uh again, someone is like making those decisions as far as like placement. I knew kids who were African American kids who were as smart as I happened to be, but they were the guys were in the sports classes, and the girls were in the home ec classes. And like I said, for me, uh I was pretty much the only one, like in the college prep. Uh, and I was happy there, but I did wonder why everybody else was placed, every place else. And I knew them personally, and I knew, the intelligence level of them. So uh, I agree with you. We are placed in school, differently. I don't know if that carries now, but then Sue, it's just like, like being like a teacher. I mean, is that something that happened like in your class as far as, you know,
yeah, not that I noticed.
okay, now even like in Compton,
Oh,
uh,
in
in,
Compton.
in the Compton schools too, when you went to school?
You
Did,
know, I don't think we had such a thing as college prep classes.
doing that? Really? Okay,
Yeah, we didn't have that kind of thing.
okay.
I don't know if it's officially tracking students. I don't know if it's based on anything other than just people's surmises, people's suppositions that some people are going to do better than others,
Yeah.
which is kind of the root of racism.
Correct.
It's something else I'd like to talk about, which I think is definitely connected to all of this, and that is I guess I call it generational wealth. That's what our parents and grandparents, the assets and wealth, literal wealth that they handed down to us, and what we hope to pass off to our children and grandchildren. And I mean, we have all sorts of gaps, right? We have all sorts of racial gaps in this country. We have the education gap, we have the wage gap. And what we have is we also have a generational wealth gap. And it's because the biggest asset that most people have is they always say your biggest investment is going to be your house.
Your home.
Right.
Exactly.
It's tough for Black people to buy homes for a lot of reasons, legal reasons, semi-legal reasons like redlining, and people don't realize, but the Veterans Administration, the great boost to the middle class after World War II, Veterans Administration helping people buy houses. Black people were specifically excluded from that program. They couldn't participate in that. So, Sue, start with you. How much of a from your point of view, how much of a detriment is this kind of thing?
I think it's huge. I look at my own life. If my grandmother had not come from Kansas to Los Angeles before I was even born and bought a little house, graduated into a duplex and then a 4-unit apartment built. If she had not done that, I wouldn't own a piece of property, because she helped me out. She helped all of us kids, all of her grandkids, get into our own property. And I just don't see how I ever could have saved up the money to do that myself, and it's a huge thing, that wealth getting passed down from generation to generation. And talking about real estate, I have a friend, practically a daughter, Naomi, who's Black, and her kids call us Grandma and Grandpa. And she tried to get into selling real estate. And it was very difficult. People coming into the office would, no, I think I'll go over to that other desk. And she would do open houses, and it just didn't work out. She tried for a couple of years in the Long Beach area. So it is a big thing. Race is a huge factor in ownership. Yeah.
And see, and then, like when you think about redlining, that's the act of the government and, and lenders. And it's like, a neighborhood and a people, and people suffer, suffer from that. It's like we can't get loans. And then it's like, it's like there are older home stocks. So it's like you need a loan in order to fix it up, in order to make it look, like personable. And so then if somebody doesn't give you a loan, so then you're stuck. I mean, like in this, old house and stuff. And then your kids, like they don't want, like an older house. So a lot of them, like leave, and then the developers come and, buy the house for nothing. And then it's like the next thing, like, the neighborhood, has become gentrified. And so, your kids are like priced out. But, like, thank God, like my relatives, like Sue's, like were able to like save up and like like buy homes, and they were able to like, like pass those down to like us. I mean, I'm in the process right now of like remodeling a home like in the, the inner city that's next to, like the Forum and SoFi. So that neighborhood is booming right now. And all type of people, are like moving in. But then before them, then it's like, like they didn't want to come into that neighborhood because pretty much, like it's all Black. But now it's like it's some of everybody, like in there. And the house prices are like, sky high. But that's a home that I'm going to be passing on to like, like my daughter, because I believe in generational wealth, you know what I mean? And it's like we do, have to take care of the next like generation. So I'm trying to do everything that I can to make sure that like my, descendants are not suffering, that they have something, that they can stand on my shoulders and like, like leap off, not just, leap off. So, I'm trying to do everything that I can in order to make sure that, I buy into like, generational wealth. So, but that redlining is something, because like when I was trying to like buy properties or like get loans, it was like it's like like they want you to already have a house that's fixed up before you can get a loan in order to fix up your house. So it's something that like I have experienced, and it's real, and it's and it's there. So I don't know what to say, Alan. It's
Well, yeah,
it's
there's
something.
some of these things are they're so ingrained. I mean, when you really think about it, I mean, racism has been part of this country since before the inception of the country. Slavery was written into our Constitution. Segregation was
Yeah,
legal for the law of the
yeah.
land. So some of these things are really ingrained
Yes,
uh,
yes.
in our society, and very, very, very difficult to remove, especially when you have people who are propagating it because it's to their advantage for something like that. Listen, I'm sorry, but we have, as we always do, we ran out of
We
time before we
always
had
run
a
out of
chance to
time.
discuss everything we wanted to. So I just want to thank you both very, very much. It was really interesting to hear both of you different perspectives. I really appreciate them.
Thank you.
So thank you very, very much for being here. It was really a pleasure. And for people watching, we'll see you soon.